Ludwig van Beethoven died after the completion of his Ninth Symphony, as did Antonin Dvorak and Gustav Mahler. If I ever wind up writing symphonies, I will stop at 8. Hello, my name is Nathaniel Meeks. I am a student at Frisco High School, and because I am enrolled in challenging classes, I have a lazy brain. Tests and scores have taught me that a job 70% done is sufficient, but that is not the case. This year I hope to do something impossible, not for the sake of impossibility, but to revolutionize something ordinary. Walt Disney once said we should set a new pattern, a new way of using music. I would like to be part of his vision to create a new way of experiencing music and the emotional effects that it has. Music has been part of my life since I was very young. One of my favorite things to do when I was 3 years old was sit in front of the radio and turn the little knobs down at the bottom that would change all the little sounds until I got in trouble for doing that. And I really began to appreciate music when I first listened to a recording of The Phantom of the Opera by Andrew Lloyd Webber. That piece really showed me the different aspects and relationships between melody and counter-melody, parts and instrumentation. In middle school, I learned more through band than ever before. I started learning an instrument and becoming acquainted with all the subtleties of instrumentation and its limits and its superiority to synthetic instruments. As I continued to advance in musicianship, I began to better appreciate the art of music making, and my ear has developed in high school marching band for better musicality. I chose to participate in the ISM program because I knew that the hands-on experience that it would provide would be far better than any other class that I could take to give me experience. A career that entices and fascinates me is the scoring of music for film, and I chose film scoring because it's a powerful medium that can elicit dramatic emotions for works of fiction, things that aren't actually happening. You can create an emotional response from someone through music. My dream is to one day work in Hollywood and write music for film and television, to work with musicians and directors to create stories and to elicit positive emotions from people. Now, naturally, the Hollywood industry is extremely competitive. My mentor, John Hunter, says you can throw a hammer out a window in Los Angeles and it'll hit an amateur composer. But working with professors at USC would give me a really good opportunity to have connections in the Hollywood world, to better be connected and know the people that I need to know to get what I need to get done. From there, I hope, if I attend USC, I hope to take part in student projects and begin to work myself up to commercials and eventually television, probably doing a lot of volunteer composing as there are so many people competing. Now, part of the research process of ISM is going and choosing articles to dissect and see how they relate to us in our careers. We call them research assessments. And one of my first assessments was over the history and philosophy of music with film. Now, music in association with story is a relatively new idea because it started with ballets and operas in the 1700s and 1800s. Massive full-piece orchestras would be put together in order to create a story, a musical story for all the actors and singers on stage. And this really started to be implemented into film with the invention of silent films. Silent films were kind of awkward because they had to write out all the words on the screen and interrupt everything that was going on. So it would be not very nice to go to a silent film without music. Music was really what made the silent films worth going to. You would usually have an organ player or a pianist, or in some cases a full-piece orchestra, playing the music for the events that were unfolding on screen. This began to evolve when the first talkies came out in the 1930s, where they could actually record musicians, hire musicians to rehearse and play it once, and have a far superior score, and you only had to pay for it once because you only had to get the musicians together once. It's evolved a little bit since then, but it serves ultimately the same purpose. Right now, film with score is mostly with full-piece orchestras, but it's still to tell the same story. The conjunction of music with celluloid is still recorded, but everything is the same. The purpose of music, if film, is to dramatize all the characters' actions, to make everything seem more real. In recent years, with the growing accessibility of music, with CDs and iTunes, people tend to listen to film scores more individually, to listen for what they want to hear, not necessarily looking for the story, but actually for the music. That's just one way that it's changed recently. A large number of composers work primarily with acoustic instruments. Because of their superior tone quality, there's always that sort of gritty, tangible nature of a real instrument that makes it so much better to listen to than synthesizers or other false instruments. But other composers do work with those instruments if they're on a tighter budget so that they don't have to hire people. And it's not their job to hire people, but on smaller budget movies or television commercials, you just can't always afford a big orchestra, so that's why you have small synthesized instruments. Despite the massive improvements in versatility of music, there's always something new that comes out. For example, in the 1919s, Leon Theremin, he was a physicist who was looking for a way of detecting coal underground. What he did was he invented this instrument called the theremin, and it was the first electronic instrument. From that instrument, the entire realm of electronic instruments has grown, and inventions like that. The theremin spawned electric guitar amps, synthesizers, modern libraries of synthesized instruments. Recently, new sampling systems and experimental instruments like there's a type of drum that's made out of a hollowed-out propane tank have become more commonplace. And it's a very interesting and fascinating thing because with the new rise of new instruments, there are so many different styles that can come out. So really, there's no way to run out of ideas on instruments. For another one of my early assessments, I studied an interview with Michael Giacchino. Michael Giacchino is an important composer of today's age. He has written things like the music for Jurassic World, the Star Trek films, lots of Pixar films as well. What he said was, you have to be on a strict schedule when you're writing music. This means you can't spend too much time on one thing. Some of these composers are pressed to write an entire hour and a half to an hour of music in 1 to 2 weeks. This makes them extremely dependent on their time management skills and also coffee. Alan LaFerre says that in order to do everything, you want to make sure that you always take every opportunity to do a gig. If you turn down an opportunity to work for someone, it will also hurt your reputation. And in the film industry, reputation is everything. So not only do they have to manage their time wisely, but they have to prioritize which jobs they take and do not take. Another part of the ISM process for the research was interviewing. We would go out and interview professionals to see if they wanted to be our mentor. My first interview was with John Hunter. He is a composer for film and television, and he has received an Oscar, or he was in a film that received an Oscar. He wrote the music for it. He also has been nominated for an Emmy in his work on the short animated film Silent. We mostly talked about the business aspect of composition, what you need to be able to do to get the job, You have to be an incredible composer and an incredible businessman and willing to put yourself out there. We talked for a good hour and a half, and it was a very nice conversation, very interesting. He had a lot of good things to say. My second interview was with Alan LaFair. Alan LaFair is a cinematographer, a director of photography, and he told me more about the film industry in general, how people work together, how schedules work, and our most important conversations were about demo reels. The creation of a demo reel is where you have a demonstration of your work so that your clients know what it is that you can do. And if they like your reel, they will most likely hire you over other people whose reels that they don't like. We talked about the different types of reels and the different lengths of reels and the different styles that you can use in the creation of reels. My third interview was with Larry Rodriguez. We interviewed at AMS Pictures, which is a production studios, and he is a producer as well for film. He gave me a tour of the studios and talked about what you can do to make yourself likable in the industry. He said that the best thing to get you a job is to be easy to work with. That most people will choose someone who's less talented but easier to work with over a more difficult and talented person. My fourth interview was with Jim Welch, who is a composer for games and television. We talked mostly about the implementation of real instruments in composition. He said that there's this sort of tangible quality that you have to a real acoustic instrument that beats out all of the intangible qualities of synthesized instruments. Nothing sounds as good as real instruments. My final interview was with Dr. John P. Zausapil, director of bands at UT Arlington. We talked mostly about conducting and communicating to an ensemble of instruments non-verbally. He also talked about going to school. He said that he had the choice between UT Austin and Northwestern University, which is one of the greatest music colleges in the United States, because he had the chance to work with incredible people, musicians from the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. And he knew that Northwest would be more challenging, but he chose to apply there and got accepted. And he said it was the greatest thing that he had ever done, the greatest decision he had made in his education career. And he encouraged me to take a risk when I'm choosing my school. And that's why I am sticking with applying for USC, as it will be a challenge for me. So I wound up making my mentor John Hunter. I chose John Hunter primarily because of his incredible work. I really appreciate the things that he has done, his music. He is a good businessman as well as he is a teacher, encouraging and helpful. Another reason why I chose him to be my mentor was because when we first met, he bought me a carafe of orange juice and a plate of beignets. For my original work, I began working with John Hunter, and I decided to create a piece of music to accompany a film clip, a clip from a nature documentary. The reason that I wanted to do it from a nature documentary was because I've always enjoyed nature documentaries, and I thought it would be a great way to start it out, to tell a story about the relationship between predator and prey, to capture the tension and emotion that I had in that. So the first step of the process was selecting my clip, and I decided to select a clip that detailed the hunting of a mountain goat by a snow leopard. And John talked to me about the process of composition for film, and he gave me a very nice and helpful list of steps. He said that the first thing to do is establish the mood. Is it going to be a scary piece? Is it going to be a happy piece, a bouncy piece, a tense piece? And he said the first thing you do is you think of what's appropriate and take the exact opposite of that. So in the case of the snow leopard and the mountain goat, I would be composing a slow love song talking about the predator-prey relationship, hunting, the wonderful, delightful process of natural selection. And I decided, of course, that's impossible. That would never work. And he said, you take the exact opposite of what's not appropriate, and you go with that. So I stuck with a high-paced, action, percussive piece. that would capture the tension and mood of everything that was going on in the clip. So after I decided that, I had to lay down a bass tempo, and the best way to do that was to section everything out through key changes, tempo changes, and time signature changes. And he said that tempo changes separate the boys from the men in the world of composers. So once I had figured out all the time signature changes and key changes and lined up with the film, I began to actually put it in with a MIDI keyboard. Let's see. With a MIDI keyboard, I could just type in the notes, and they would appear on the screen. Now after that, I had to make sure that they sounded relatively realistic with the tools that I had available. So I used echoes and reverbs to increase their realism of the instruments. John enjoyed the piece. He was glad that I didn't make it far too dramatic, and overall I count it as a success. So the Independent Study Mentorship Program and my original work have taught me a lot through this first semester. Working with John is an incredible privilege, and he is an incredible teacher, and it has helped me so much to prepare for the future and the business side. He is realistic, and he doesn't sugarcoat things, and he tells me the things that I need to know when I need to know them. My original work has helped me to prepare for potential years of music composition and college portfolios and demo reels. As I look forward to the years of music composition, I must consider financial time and investments that it will require. It will be a large investment, but if I do wind up writing music, I will not work another day for the rest of my life. Thank you so much for listening.